Do you know what it feels like to be doing your passion, to be living your purpose, to be on fire? I felt that way this past weekend when I was leading my meetup about how to find love after loss. You know what my gift is? My gift is to enable people to connect with their heart, particularly after it's been shut down from a huge loss, and also to reconnect with their hope, to see a future, to believe that there is still something to be done. In fact, that what needs to be done can be a response, can grow out of the loss. Now that's hard to work with people who have gone through significant losses. And yet I often find that it is in those significant changes that we take a risk, that we actually start to change. When everything is okay, which means zero killed, we just keep on living our lives the way they are. Okay. But when push comes to shove, when our whole life gets obliterated, when things get really difficult, that's when we start to think about, well, maybe I need to change. Maybe I need to do something different. Maybe the universe is nudging me to do something different. Maybe this experience is inspiring me to do something big. And when everything gets swept away, or you have this shift in your perspective, you start to take action. So that was what happened to me. So after I connected with my husband, I realized I needed to do early childhood healing because I had a pattern that was tamping me down, that was preventing me from living my purpose. In fact, I didn't even have any idea about purpose because I was a people pleaser and my focus was all out there. What do you need? Let me please you. It's a manipulative practice because what ultimately the inner child wants is attention, is love, is approval. And so when the people pleaser gives to other people, they're not doing it for them. They're doing it for yourself, for their own satisfaction. And so it's a manipulation. Very different, for example, from the service leader who also gives, but gives from the place of what that person needs for their growth and development. Now, the cool thing is that if you start out as a people pleaser, you can get to that other place if you work on it. So what changed me? What changed me, you can see the theme of life and death, was the death of my father and mother, which happened shortly after I finished doing that emotional childhood healing. So now my emotions, which had been tamped down for years, were online. It was like, oh no. So my father died, and since he had Alzheimer's, it's like I had been grieving him for a long time. He had already left in many ways. So it was a release. But then my mother who had breast cancer, it came back, and now she was dying. And I went back to help her finish up her business. My mother was a toy designer. She actually sold her designs to major toy companies in New York City: Gund, Hasbro, E.G. Dolls, Sears. She never made it big, maybe because of her childhood wounds, but she made a difference. Anyway, she's like gotten off her chemo and she's like, okay, that it's not worth it. I'm ready to go. And she had just lost her husband 6 months ago. And we're sitting in her studio going through papers. And I pick up a paper. It's one of her designs. And I hand it to her. It was actually a Xerox copy. And I say, do you need this anymore? I'm like being practical, the practical daughter, cleaning up the room. And she looks at it and she says, oh, I guess I'll never get to that project. And her words, oh my God, they pierced my heart. Because in that moment, I understood what deadline really means. It means that you've run out of time. And she had run out of time. But I was afraid. So I said, we don't need to deal with this right now. And I changed the subject. Instead of holding the space for her to explore her feelings, to face her death, I emotionally ran away. And you know what? That moment of intimacy that I had craved with my mother all my life was lost forever. I went back to California and she died less than 2 weeks later. And her moment of regret became my moment of regret. But it was her final gift. It woke me up. Suddenly I realized that life was short, that you never knew how long a time you had. She was only 78. You don't know how long a time you have. And so I decided that I was not going to live with regret. I was going to live my passion. Although I had no idea what it was because I had spent so much of my life ignoring my feelings. But now I had my feelings online. So the first thing I got involved with was life and death because it had woken me up. And I made a documentary film series and I started leading group explorations and workshops. I joined hospice and that has brought me to where I am today. And where I am today is enabling other women, coaches, healers, change makers, to wake up, to live their purpose, to find their courage. Because it does take courage. Because we grow up believing that we're not supposed to be ourselves. Many of us do. Not all of us, but many of us do. We have parents who are also fearful. My mother was fearful. She had a father who was an alcoholic, and she was a fear person. And yet also she was the poster child for living your passion. She just wasn't successful. And that's what we want too. You want to be successful because in order to really live your passion, you need to attract the financial support to make your impact. So first, the question I have for you is, what's your passion? What are you passionate about? What is your gift? Do you know what it is? Or are you like me? You have no idea. You've been so busy pleasing everybody else and taking care of everybody else that you've never even stopped to think about it. I worked with a client. Her passion is to be a doctor. She was involved in a relationship that was taking all of her energy. And she was putting all of her effort into that because she too was a people pleaser. And she felt that that was more important. We got her out of that relationship. And now she is moving towards her passion. What I found out though is it's a journey. It isn't a once and for all, now I've got it, now it's done. But it's a step-by-step process. So what's holding you back? Are you in a relationship that's undermining your power and holding you back from stepping into your purpose? Do you have family members? Do you run into crises all the time? Maybe you feel you need more education because you're not having the traction that you want. So maybe you need to go back to school. Or maybe you don't have enough money to invest in one of these funnels. I have done a lot of those programs. We always get into those business programs, and what you don't realize is it's the emotions, it's the self-confidence that makes the difference. That the formulas do not work if you don't believe in yourself. And that's the work that I do. Empower women by healing the emotional wounds and negative thoughts that prevent you from stepping into your full authentic power, from having the traction, from making the difference. That's my gift. So why is this so important? Maybe it doesn't matter whether you live your passion or not. I happen to believe that we are born with a purpose. Like Martha Graham talks about, this energy, this vitality, this quickening that we come into this world with, that is totally unique to each and every one of us. And if you do not share your gift, it will not exist in this world for all time. It will be lost forever. And it is not your job to determine how good it is or how important it is. Your job is to keep the channel open. So how do you do that? You need to work on yourself. You need to heal the emotional wounds. You need to find the confidence. Because guess what? If you don't have the confidence, all those formulas for success that are on the internet that are just waiting to grab up your money, they won't work. Because your people can tell the difference. Even though they don't know it, they can feel it. If you are needy, if you are wanting their approval, instead of standing in authentic leadership, they'll pass you by. And you will sell yourself short. And you will not charge enough. And you will not make enough money to make a difference. So it's really important to get this addressed. And that's what I do. I empower women to step into their power, to find their confidence, to identify what their true passion is. Sometimes people don't even know what their passion is. They just know that they are not satisfied. They're living in jobs that are stultifying. They're killing themselves. They can tell because their physical body is screaming at them. I have a client who came to me because her body was falling apart because she was working so hard all the time to make money. And she made money, but it was never enough. It was never enough. And she actually does have a dream, but she was too busy. And we actually had to change. She had a huge breakthrough. And her breakthrough was to realize that she could not work at that job anymore. Even though it has supported her for years, it doesn't fit with her values. And how many of us live those lives of quiet desperation in jobs that eat us up and do not fulfill our passion, our heart, our dreams? Here's another thing that you need to know. The number one regret of the dying, the number one regret is not living a life true to yourself. That was a book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware, an Australian hospice nurse. And she interviewed hundreds of patients, and that was the number one regret. I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself. We never know how much time we have. If you don't start doing it now, when are you going to start doing it? So when are you going to live your passion? What's holding you back? You waiting for more time, more energy, more money? The voice of God. You don't want to wait for the voice of God. The voice of God is oftentimes a really heavy hit, like losing somebody, like your whole life kind of crumbling around you, like going into that caterpillar cocoon where your body and your whole life turns to liquid and you have no idea where you're going from here. And it's much harder to pick up the pieces. And I admit, it is challenging to live a life of courage when you're afraid. And you have a mind that's telling you, oh, you can't do it. Because that little inner child is saying, oh no, nobody's going to love me. And the worst fear that human beings have is to be rejected. That's underlying so much of our habits, is being rejected. Because we're social beings, we're herd animals. We feel safe in community. And when our community questions us, like you have a husband or spouse that says, why don't you get a job already? You're not getting anywhere. You're not making money. And you're like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. But you don't have the support. Or every time you try something, you sabotage yourself because there's that little inner child that says, oh no, let's not do this. And you get sick. I'm in Toastmasters, and there are a number of people who each week say they're going to do their speech. And then they contact me that day and they say, oh, I'm sick. For some of us, sickness, and by the way, sickness is a really good excuse. Everybody says, oh, of course, take care of yourself. But we oftentimes bring that sickness on ourselves because we're afraid. Or maybe there's another sabotaging way, which is distraction. It's like, oh, I need to do this first. Oh, I need to clean the house first. Oh, I need to organize my files first. Oh, my daughter just had a crisis. I need to deal with that first. I've dealt with a lot of clients who have had a lot of excuses. At some point, you have to step up. And that's what I do. I hold you accountable. I enable you to see what your patterns are so that you can start to change them. And this is the cool thing, is that as you start to change them, all of the habits, all the emotional wounds that are underneath show up and show you what's holding you back. Would you like to know more? Would you like to know how I work with my clients? Could you use some support? Schedule an introductory call with me. There's a link over in the comments section. And let's have a chat. 15, 20 minutes, find out if there's a resonance and move forward. That's the subject for today. Live your passion. Be brilliant. And bye for now.